Ahoy, ahoy, everybody. How's it going? I just got to say, I watched the Rebel Moon trailer a couple days ago, and I am, no pun intended, over the moon excited about it. It looks so awesome. What do you guys think about it? What's your favorite part? I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on Rebel Moon trailer because I really enjoyed it. So, super looking forward to that part one and part two. So, today I'm here because we are doing a Snyderverse Saga Q&A. There's not very many, so I won't be here too long. Won't take too much of your time. But the first one here comes from Naveen, from either Twitter or otherwise known as X now. What was your writing process? Outline. Throw out a rough draft and refine it, chapter at a time and organize later, all of the above, or totally not at all? That is an excellent question. So for my writing process, I wrote down everything. I'm an outliner. I'm not a pantser. I'm very meticulous about the structure of it because then that helps me as I'm going through the actual process of writing the manuscript. I have something to a skeletal structure to refer back to. So yeah, I put in a whole bunch of dates and um, certain things that I knew off the top of my head, and then filled in the rest as later on, but as part of the outlining process. And then after I outlined it, then I went through and actually wrote the book. But I actually, kind of a strange way of doing it for me is that I actually wrote my outline into my manuscript itself, which a lot of people probably don't do. But in this case, it was helpful for me because then I had every chapter already laid out and the information I wanted in that chapter in the order that I wanted to have it. And then it's just a matter of writing out the content of that. So that's kind of how I did that. Zach Langridge from Vero asked a similar question. How did you organize all your research and sources for each chapter? Was there a way of categorizing everything? What if a source, for example, a link, website on the internet, went missing? That is the tough part, right? So a lot of it was off the top of my head because I've lived this. I've been a big fan of the Zack Snyder DC movies, and Man of Steel was just such a huge thing for me. I was so excited for that movie when it came out, and then with BVS, that's probably the most excited I've ever been for a movie, like ever, to this day. So, uh, and obviously, Zack Snyder's Justice League is also near and dear to my heart too. A lot of us fans spent a lot of time and money and effort to help make that happen, not just so that we could watch the movie, but for charity, for AFSP, and also for Zach and his family. So I guess the biggest thing for me and how I organized my research, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of it I knew off the top of my head, and then I would write it all out, usually in all caps, and I would kind of put it like a line or two below where I was currently at it in the manuscript or whatnot. Um, then I would just work my way down through it. But yeah, I wrote down everything. For me, for categorizing everything, and I don't recommend this, but I went through and wrote the whole book itself first, and then went back in and filled in everything with footnotes, which is like the sourcing, right? And I'm for my next nonfiction book, I'm actually doing it while I'm writing it, which will probably save me a lot of time, and that's probably what I'd recommend. But yeah, that's kind of the way that I did it. A lot of it I know off the top of my head. Some of it was, there's a few things here and there that I hadn't remembered or learned on along the way. But uh, that was the biggest thing for me. Is for me the structure was super important, and how I was going to tell this story. I mean, that part of it did not change from start to finish. I knew I wanted to go for the most part chronological order. you know, Obviously we started off with Man of Steel and then BVS, and then kind of what happened after that, right? With all the different changes with the executives and the movies that were supposed to happen and then weren't going to happen, and then different movies were going to happen, and then some of those movies didn't even happen. So yeah, and then of course I ended it with the big triumphant release of HBO Max for Zack Snyder's Justice League and the whole process of how that movie came to be. So, and I published the book obviously back in 2021. So, uh, it was pretty current back then, and that wasn't even initially in my process. Like when I was writing the book, it was initially going to be more focused on Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, right? So that was kind of the game plan. And then while I was writing the manuscript, the announcement came out like, hey, they were going to release Zack Snyder's Justice League, right? The Man of Steel live stream. So at that point, I was like, all right, we have more to write about now. So I personally, like, I have not really talked to Sean O'Connell much at all. If you know, like the times I have talked to him have been just messaging once or twice. Like when I was writing the book and when he was announcing he was doing his book, I actually reached out to him and said, "Hey, like, is this like if you feel like what I'm doing is going to step on what you're doing, I won't do it." And he said no. I thought it would be fine. Didn't think it would be a problem. So, what essentially, like, I have no ires. I don't know. I mean, there's probably comparisons out there with his book compared to my book. Um, I don't think there's an overlap. His book's more about the fandom and how this fandom helped bring to existence the idea and release of the Snyder Cut of Justice League. And my book is about everything. So it's much bigger, covers a much broader range. I still talk about fans, but not nearly to the extent that maybe he does in his book. So it is what it is. And then let's see here. Brad Curran, shout out. How's it going, Brad? He asked, what has been the response to the book that you've seen by people who weren't necessarily in the weeds of the release of Snyder Cut campaign and have learned about it more recently? I feel like the response overwhelmingly has been positive, and that's super awesome. And I'm super thankful, right, that so many people seem to really enjoy the book. And I spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to make this book happen. So, I mean, I don't like to talk the financial aspect too much, but I'll just say this: I'll probably never see a profit, I should say, for the book because it was not cheap, to make that happen. I have illustrations in the book, so you obviously have to pay someone to illustrate the book and the book cover design and the editing process and marketing. So there was a lot of stuff that goes into the actual publishing of the book. So it's when you put that much effort and time into it, it's really cool to see a really positive response and people really enjoying it. And that really was the purpose and the goal of doing it. For me, it wasn't about making a profit. Is it nice? Yes, obviously. All content creators, whether that's artists like filmmakers or authors or people who are on YouTube or whatever you do, right? Uh, of course, that is helpful, but at the same time, knowing that there's people out there who really enjoy what you do and find a lot of value in it, I think that is the ultimate goal. And really, the ultimate goal for me too is just to do justice to this topic, And I feel like over the years, there's been a lot of negativity towards it and a lot of things that aren't true being said about it. And my goal is just to lay out all the facts and let people make their opinion on it based on the facts of it. And I just, for the 99% of the book, I left my opinion out of it. So that was the ultimate goal. But people have been really supportive and seem to really enjoy it. And that just is so awesome. So, all right, last question that I have for you is from my buddy Reese from Facebook. And he says, what's your pre writing routine? Getting your favorite drink ready? Queuing up a Spotify playlist? Wow, that is a good question. And I'm sure this varies a lot from writer to writer. But for me, my pre-writing routine, well, it almost sounds like like the pregame for like the NFL or something. I don't know, but uh, I guess for me, yes, I always try to have some kind of. I usually drink a lot of stuff all the time, so I'll have water or Gatorade or whatever, some kind of drink nearby. And then, yeah, like I do listen to music when I write. It usually varies on the topic, like whatever book project I'm working on. It'll that the music for that is different for each one. So obviously, for the Snyderverse, the musical scores composed by Hans Zimmer, Junkie XL / Tom Holkenborg uh, are incredible. Some of the most appreciated aspects of those movies are the music from them. So I listen to a lot of that. I listen to a lot of the soundtracks of Man of Steel, BVS, Zack's Justice League. I listen, and I still do for a few other projects too that I do, but in general because there's just really good pieces of music, and so that's kind of what I listened to when I wrote the book. It was more specifically Man of Steel and BVS because Justice League came out not too long before I published the book and had to have the manuscript turned in to have it published in time. So that was what I did, and what I did is I wrote it on my laptop, and there were times when I would use my phone if I was kind of like not able to use my laptop. For everything's cloud based, so it just saves automatically. But yeah, the biggest thing is I tried to I try to get into the zone, and just try to that's the biggest thing is getting into the mindset, and getting ready to not just it's not just about like the energy, like you have to attack your topic, you have to make it happen, because if you just otherwise you'll stare at a blank screen all day. You have to be able to find a way to get motivated to be able to um, make that happen, and that's part of the fun because once you get going and once you're in it, like for me, I don't want to stop. I just want to keep going and going and going and hours on end. And that's you have to enjoy the process, I think. And I think a lot of people are scared of that process of actually writing they feel like writing a book can be a daunting task that might feel super super overwhelming. But I mean, for me, I mean, the biggest thing is if you enjoy the craft of creating something, then yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing, and that's gonna go a long ways to helping you achieve it and accomplish your goals. And I also don't want to be the only person who writes about this topic. I mean, I'm sure the biggest thing is just having something important to say. And I had something to say about this topic, and I have something to say about other writing projects that I am working on. So that's the biggest thing. So that's my routine. You know, I sit down, I have my laptop, I get the music going. For the most part, I listen to stuff that isn't vocal, just purely instrumental. There's one project where I do listen to some vocal music, but almost always I feel like it works better for me if I'm just listening to instrumental music. So uh, otherwise, sometimes the words kind of throw me off and whatnot. But that's all I got for the Q&A, guys. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you all enjoyed the book, and I hope you all enjoyed the Rebel Moon trailer, and looking forward to the movie in December. So thanks again for all the questions and all the support for the book, and I will talk to you all again soon.